Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Bootstrap Solo. I am Pratik Shaw, your host, and today we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly about running your own practice. This podcast is for those that want to know what it's really like to start, run, and grow a practice. Today's guest is Chris Earley of Earley Law Group. He runs a 15-person practice out of Boston, and he focuses on personal injury. He started his practice back in 2005 and has been growing strong ever since. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks for being
on.
It. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, of course. So, 2005, you started a practice, 15 people. How long were you an attorney when you started your own practice?
For about 9 months to a year. Yeah. So
Also, very early
early,
on.
very, very early. Once I hung my shingle. Yeah. I didn't really know anything. But thankfully we've figured some stuff out along the way.
Yeah, no, right. We were just talking about that right before we jumped on. It's like you just kind of figure it out, and you can't be afraid as long as you kind of avoid any of the extinction level mistakes. Blowing a statute, something like that, right? Avoid that stuff. You learn, and as long as you're open to learning, you keep going. But we talked about kind of the stuff we want to talk to our audience about in this podcast, and I think you've taken a very interesting role in your firm. Is that you've really intentionally become a CEO of your business versus an in the practice lawyer, and kind of stepping away from the day-to-day practice and more running the business of the law firm. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. That's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
I love that. And so I want to dive into that, but I want to start with, in 2005, when you started your practice, had you ever run any businesses before?
No, I had no experience. And actually, Pratik, I just wrote on LinkedIn this morning about how lawyers, we don't really get trained at all or taught in law school about the business of law. And so I personally had to sort of teach myself, right? And I feel like a lot of lawyers have to do that, right? Be it, mastermind, seminars, coaching. We're not taught this stuff. And I was just talking on LinkedIn. I hope it gets easier for future generations of lawyers that they talk about this in law school. They teach you this is a business. It's not a practice of law. It's a business of law. Right. So once you kind of get your head around that, you can get very competitive, I feel like, in a very competitive, space.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in the past few years, we've definitely seen a lot more content and conferences and coaching as it relates to teaching lawyers how to run their own practice. I mean, when I started mine, and obviously you started yours before I started mine. So, when you started yours, there was no discussion happening in the kind of meta of here's how you need to think about your business. Here's people that can help you kind of structure your business properly. But the reason I ask about the prior business experience, most people that obviously start their law firm, they went to law school to be a lawyer. They didn't really think about running a business or anything like that. But I ask that because you've clearly taken on now a business role in your firm. Did you have that vision when you started in 2005, or did you start off wanting to be like the day-to-day lawyer doing the work?
Really good question. So again, back 2005, like you said, lawyers were a lot less focused on running a business, right, as opposed to practice of law. So, and I was no different. I was just, cutting my teeth, handling cases, just hustling for work, man. I didn't, come from any lawyer background, no privilege. So I sort of had to make it happen. And so, I a lot of hustle, a lot of grind, and just back in the day, I was just like working so hard, not really working smart, like intelligently, right? Um, in terms of working being busy as opposed to being productive. Anyway, back then I was just kind of just thinking, okay, I'm a lawyer, just handle cases. I'm practicing law, handling PI cases, and that was good. I mean, it was great until it sort of plateaued. You can only do so much by yourself, right? I'm sure everyone listening to this can appreciate that, right? Me and you, everyone else, we know we can only get so many things done in the day. And so I was grinding myself really hard and working really hard. And then I think, fast forward, sort of to the pandemic, a lot of lawyers were pulling back. They were freaking out. And I was freaking out too, because there were no cars on the road. There was no one going out. There was no work, essentially, right? We had our inventory, but the concern was future cases, right? And so I was sitting in my man cave in my home, and I thought, this might be a good time to go for it, right? And so I decided to scale, but I was honestly totally ignorant, didn't know anything about a business. It was more of just like in a law practice, and there's no shame with that. There's nothing wrong with that, but just more like grinding cases, not knowing KPIs, not being sensitive to spreadsheets, data, um, a million other things, culture, right? I mean, just a million things that go into the stew of a healthy, profitable, productive business. I wasn't doing any of that, but I was doing okay. But anyway, kind of flatlined, and the revenue was very nice, but you can't scale beyond that, beyond yourself if it's just you. So just me and an assistant. And then when the pandemic hit, I started to get sensitive to systems. If anyone on this call has not read the book, I encourage you, buy it today on Amazon, The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, right? All about, running an actual business. That changed my whole outlook. And I was just like mind blown, right? There's a better way to do it. That was
Yeah.
big time for me.
Yeah, I want to jump in. I highly recommend the E-Myth too. And the one there's like 15 variations. The one I read and really liked was just the E-Myth revisited. There's one that's called like the E-Myth attorney and all that stuff.
Yep.
Forget it, because you're going to know your own business. So it's better to read the kind of generic book and then apply it to your own business and your business model versus looking for something that's going to give you a direct playbook, because nothing's going to really exist that gives you a direct playbook. But I want to touch on something you said. You mentioned that 2005 you started your practice. You were grinding and hustling cases, trying to find them, however you could, and then it wasn't really until the pandemic when you realized, okay, I've hit a plateau. I need to create systems. So was it essentially about 15 years in,
Yeah.
2005 to 2020, before you started thinking, oh, I need to be more of a business guy than I do need to be a
100%.
lawyer?
I consider myself a late bloomer. I was in my probably very early 40s, like 41. But I would encourage anyone on the call, sometimes we find um, we figure things out later, right? Sometimes it's early in our career, but sometimes it's a little bit later. For me, it was a little bit later. You may, people on this call may not figure it out till their 50s, and that's fine, right? But just I would encourage you, always just be trying to get a little bit better each day. I consider myself lucky because there was one day right before the pandemic. I was having a crappy day, and I took the day off. My wife was like, "Oh my God, you're not going to work? What's going on?" I said, "I just need to like step back. This is driving me crazy, this business, right? Or this practice, I should say." And then I found a legal conference. I never been to one. I went to that. Everything changed.
What conference?
Great legal marketing in Virginia. That's what changed. So I got out of Massachusetts, right? There's only so much you can learn from your state. You have to like feel like you got to get on airplanes and travel and shake hands with lawyers from all over the country. That decision to go on that conference changed my career like entirely, right? And I'm happy to talk about it later, but I'm actually like coaching other lawyers now and running a business, right? We've come a long way. And I'm not saying this to gloat, not whatsoever. I mean that there's been a lot of gains the past few years. But if you're, I think everyone on the call has to be patient, right? This is a long game, and so not everyone, I can speak from experience, figures it out, early in their career. Some do, but I think a lot of us need some time. And for me, it was like my early 40s until things really started to click.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I want to ask a few questions about that kind of
Sure,
15-year
sure.
window of when you were you just doing personal
Yes,
injury the whole
that's
time?
it.
Okay, so you were doing some pre-litigation, of course. Were you doing litigation, or were you just pre-lit?
Yes, it was pre-lit, lit, not a lot of trials back then. It was more, resolving cases, but definitely, really going to bat for our clients. But we just totally do things so differently now, right? In terms of working up cases, in terms of,
Yeah,
client service. But yeah, back in the day, Pratik, um, handling maybe a couple hundred cases at a time, tops, right? Maybe 100 to 200 cases,
yeah,
one team member. I was going to the post office and mailing letters. There was something wrong with that. But you
yeah,
look back and you're like, why was I doing that? Like, that's crazy
yeah.
town. So,
No,
mm,
that's exactly right. And you talk about hitting that plateau, and that's exactly what happens, right? Is if you want to be the person doing all the work, there's even if you don't sleep, even if you don't eat and don't take any breaks, you still only have 24
that's
hours
it.
in a day, right? That's the absolute maximum of what you can do, which means you're going to be capped by that time period. And that's, and realistically, it's more closer to probably 14, 15 hours a day is really what you could do in a productive, but then you're not spending any time doing anything else, right? So that is going to limit your productivity no matter what. No matter, even if you're super productive for 18 hours a day, you're still capped at 18 hours a day. And that's when you need to think about kind of scaling. But the reason I ask those questions about those 15 years is because I think a lot of that, I'm guilty of this too, is when I started my practice, and I think what we promote in the personal injury world for good reason is our big trial lawyers, right? That are getting huge verdicts, and there's a status that comes with that. There's a prestige that comes with that. There's obviously the financial benefit that can come with that, and a lot of people are focused early on in their career about, I want to be the trial lawyer, and there seems to be this semi stigma. I think it's kind of going away a little bit now, but it definitely existed for a while. Of, if you just said, "Oh, hey, I only do pre-lit," or if you said, "Hey, I don't do any trials. I just run a law firm. I actually don't do any legal work." There's some stigma that came with that. And what's important is being able to say, "I don't really care because it's not what I want." So, did you have that kind of impetus when you started of, "Hey, look, I'm supposed to be a trial lawyer. That's what everybody is supposed to be when they start that practice." Was that kind of in your
Well,
mind as
I'm going to be
well?
really upfront with you and honest. Like, I'm not. I'm a better business owner than I'm a lawyer. When I realized that, it was like, okay, so you need to find and surround yourself by people who compliment you, because I feel like you need to lean into what you're good at, and then be surround yourself with people who can make up for your shortcomings, right? And so, I had tried some cases, I got my teeth knocked in, like literally, and I was just like, okay. And so I never truly loved that experience. I'm more like, I like to, create a system for the business, right? Or hire someone who can create a system. I'm into, again, the business side, right? The delegation, the systems, the marketing, again, culture, onboarding, training, a million things. So I'm just being super transparent. Like, I'm not the best, trial lawyer, nor do I aspire to be. I want to surround myself with those lawyers, and I will bring in the work, and I will do everything I can to make this the best job you've ever had in your entire life. Right? That's my intention. Hire A players, equip them with great technology, great resources, great cases, and get out of their way. So I think, again, Pratik, the audience needs to be realistic on what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, right? I mean, I think
And that's the hard part, right? Usually it's not until you're later on in your career, or later on as you get a little become more of a veteran, I will
yeah,
say,
yeah,
right? that you can actually
hundred
be honest
percent.
with yourself and say, "You know what? I was kind of doing that for the wrong reasons, or I don't actually really want that. Or maybe I want it, but I don't want to pay the price that it takes to become that." When I looked at it for a while of all the trial lawyers, and I look at their lifestyle of constantly being in trial and constantly, it's not what I wanted. And that's really hard, is to make sure that if you're starting your practice, you're in the middle of trying to figure out what it is you want. Maybe you've done a couple trials, it didn't work out. Maybe you've done some litigation, it didn't work out. Whatever it may be, being honest with yourself and saying, is it, why am I doing this? Why is it? Because I actually really want this? Am I doing this because I think this is where the money is at? Am I doing it because this is, or am I doing this because I think this is what gets me respect in the community and status? Figuring out what is it that you actually like doing, because the only person that has to actually do this for the next 30
Right,
years is you,
right,
nobody
right.
else. And so you better actually, like you said, figure out what is the thing I'm good at, what is the thing I like doing, and let me double down on that and triple down on that, and delegate everything I'm not really wanting to do, or that I don't think I'm as good at, and let them
No,
handle it.
there's no question. But like, I'm just, you have to be, that requires humility. Again, I went I go to a lot of events, and trial lawyers have big egos, and I think you need to have a big ego, right? And that's fine. But you got to be honest about, like, what's your strength. Maybe you're better trying XYZ cases as opposed to trying these cases, right? So whatever it is, being
Yeah.
real and honest about who you are and what you bring to the table, because I feel like that's a recipe for massive rocket ship growth, right? And I a lot of people there's a lot of there's puffery, and there's a lot of ego, and that's fine, but that's not me. So I just lean into my authentic self. But I would encourage
Yeah.
everybody, Pratik, if you I've learned, I'm mid career, as I see here with you. I'm probably mid career, roughly,
Yeah.
right? If you chase money only, right, it's not going to bring you happiness or any kind of success. You're going to be miserable. And so I think you need to chase your passion. What's your passion? I know really good trailers. They don't even, the money is like not even the big thing. It's like they want to win. They just want to like kick your butt in
Yeah.
trial and get a W. Like, that gets them, that motivates them. And so this is what I'm becoming sensitive to. I'm 47 is like, I used to chase money, right? I'm not going to lie to you. For many years, but now it's like, I like the business side. If I could, run this business at a high level, the money's going to come, right? Good things will happen.
Yep.
So, I would encourage everyone.
There's an old saying. There's an old saying that I heard that I thought was so appropriate for this right here, which is, if you chase a butterfly, it flies away. But if you build a garden, you get multiple
Yes,
butterflies.
indeed. Right. Yeah.
And I think that's so apropos to what you're talking about is if you just focus on building what it is you want to build, the goals will come. One of the things we mantra at Esquire Tech is take care of our customers first, take care of our employees second, and growth and profits will follow. Let's build the product we want to build. Let's build the customer service and the employee space that we want to build, and the rest will just come. It just does naturally. As long as you keep an eye on the things that you're supposed to
Yeah.
keep an eye on, it will. It's hard to do that because you're always looking at that quarterly number or that yearly number, and you're worried about hitting it, and you get very tempted to say, well, if we take
Yeah.
this shortcut or if we
Yeah.
do this, we'll get there. And it's not the right way of looking at it. I've made that mistake. I can't even count how many
Sure.
times.
Sure.
And having the patient, it's kind of like, for the sports fans that are listening, it's kind of like if you're playing defense on football, and if you chase the guy with the ball and you don't stay home on your side of the field and they reverse it on you, and if you just stayed patient and stayed home, you would have stopped the play. And it's kind of similar here in business. If you just stick to the plan, come up with a good plan, stick to the plan, and keep it going. But I want to ask you, you mentioned that at some point you made a decision that you
Yes.
wanted to scale. What was the reasons for that decision? Like, you had been doing this for 15 years.
Yeah.
You were doing
Yeah.
fine, presumably. Obviously, you're still in business after 15 years, so you're doing fine. Because if you're not out of business, you're doing fine, right? 15 years in, it's working, you're going, and at some point you decide, you know what, I really want to scale it up. What was the thought process that made you decide you wanted to
Well,
scale
I'm
it
going to
up?
answer that, but I just want to back up for one quick second. Is the way I do things now, I look back, Pratik, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe like I used to do it that way. Are you kidding me? Like, how did this business now
Yeah,
implode?
yeah,
So every day it's like, oh my God, it's scary to look back the way you used to do things, but that's progress. That's development. And that's a good thing. So I look at the business as a means to an end. So I'm married with 2 kids. I want the business to enter my lifestyle. So my ultimate goal is to go on a trip for 4 weeks, right? Europe, I don't care, wherever. I'm irrelevant. Talk about Michael Gerber. Think about McDonald's, right? Ray Kroc didn't have to like flip burgers and, you know, handle the cash register. He had people doing that, and that was a system. So he could separate and grow that thing, right? And he did that obviously at a high level. But that was my motivator, is to step away, because when you get older, you realize that you don't have an unlimited career time, right? This is a finite limit of years that you have, and my kids are growing fast, right? And so it's like, I don't want to, I can't sustain this, nor do I want to. There's a better way, right? And that's scale. That's how you remove yourself. You create systems and processes, and you bring in rock stars, to run the business. So it was so much letting go, man. So much delegation and mindset shifts to get out of my own way and say, okay, I'm gonna, give that to someone else to do. But the more you do that, it's like, I can't believe I used to go to the post office all those times. I can't believe I used to, you know, do that. Whatever it is. Like, how did I
right.
actually make money doing the right? Doing those not those busy tasks as opposed to productive tasks. So that's what it was for me.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think there's some weird pride when you first start your practice, when you're doing everything, you take a little bit of this pride of like, look how much
Yeah,
I'm working. And you realize like the people that are actually running businesses and actually are being able to have both, they're looking at you and saying you're not smart for doing
yeah,
everything yourself. Like you take some weird psychological psycho pride in this, like I do everything. Well, you shouldn't. You should figure out how to quickly get to the point where you're not doing everything.
1,000%.
And I think the key there is like you said, in hiring people and getting them the
Yeah,
career they want, because everybody wants different things in their career, right? You may want a business that can run without you there on a day to day, and there are people that just they want a career where they can do XYZ. So finding the right fit, that not everything is for everybody, and having finding those right people that are like you can talk to and say, hey, look, you're going to be able to try case.
yeah,
If you want to be a trial lawyer, I've got a space for you. You can try cases. I'm not going to get in your way. I'll
yeah.
give you the resources. and here's your space for you to hit the numbers you want to hit for yourself. How do you go about finding those people?
Okay, that's I think so. I'm actually speaking at the Miami National Tri Lawyers Conference in January, this coming January, January 2024, and my topic is how to how to compete against the 800-pound gorilla in your market. I have probably 87 800-pound gorillas in Boston. So my philosophy is it's a hiring game. Who can hire the best, right? And I think we have a really drawn out, extensive process. I like Pratik to make it hard on people to get a job here. I don't mean to sound like a jerk here. I'm being honest. Like if someone is willing to go through the process of doing a personality test, of doing 3 interviews, that shows desire on their part, right? And if anyone wants to reach out to me, I can share my job ads. I believe in abundance. I share my stuff. Use it if you want, but job ads are really important. Where you post your job ads, like core values. We have a vivid vision. Our vivid vision is on our job application. So I think it starts with like the message you send out there, because you should only be speaking to very, very few people who are picking up what you're putting down, right? And then, but it's it's all about people, right? You get the right people. You're gonna, even if you kill it, you're just the best. I'm the worst, I feel like. But if you're the best hire on planet Earth, they say you're only gonna hit it or be successful 50% of the time. That's like really good. That's
Yeah.
how hard this stuff is. But they say, an A player can do sometimes, triple the work of a B player. So, I'd rather just get, I'd rather be super selective. They say hire slow and fire fast, right? You bring someone on, they work out great. If not, you gotta cut bait. It's only fair to them. I set them free. Let them go somewhere else to thrive. But to answer your question, I think it's about hiring, right? Once you bring them on the bus, I'm really into overtraining. I used to have no training systems in place. Now literally overtraining, redundancy as much as you can with onboarding, and I think that's your competitive advantage. Um, it's really
Yeah.
tough.
So so tell me about your hiring process. You say you make it tough. You mentioned personality tests. Okay, so you put us to job ad. Let's say I
Mhm.
submit a resume and I respond to your job ad. What's the
Well,
process
I'm
that
going
I
to
would go
assume
through?
you follow the directions in because there's embedded in there. There's
Yes,
embedded.
yes.
I want you to reply with the word apples in the subject line, like kind of random stuff to show that you were paying attention, that you actually care about applying here. You're not just blasting 1,000 resumes this morning. Um, and so we look through those, right? And then I don't really care about experience. Like I can teach someone how to handle a case, but if I have the intangibles, the 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 team player who cares about team, isn't about me, is about us, is about cooperation, growth. I want people who are always wanting to grow. I like readers of books. I like people who geek out on a hobby or a sport, like they really drill down on something, shows passion to me. So bring them in for a couple interviews, right? How does that go? If it goes well, put them through a third party evaluation. It really digs deep and tells you more about the person. Now, again, like more times than not, I miss, and that's okay because when you get someone good, then you're in a good spot. You can do something there, right? And you can really create a great environment for that person. But I think it's people, people, people. Especially we're just out of this great resignation period. I was scaling Pratik during the great resignation. So hiring was just insane. It was impossible. It's softened up a bit, but that was where I cut my teeth in terms of trying to figure out, okay, how do I get really good people in a really tough job market?
Yeah, just drilling in on that. So let's say I respond and I follow those directions. What would be the
Yeah,
next
so
step?
I'm gonna have you in for a couple of interviews. See, and I have some real. And again, anyone can reach out to me. I'll share my
How many interviews do you do with
two,
somebody?
but I ask off the wall questions, and these questions I didn't really develop. They're more just curated from some books I've read and seminars. Just really meaningful questions, not like generic stuff. Like, hey, Pratik, like just I don't know, just generic stuff. I'll ask you like, if you were, for example, I'll ask you if you were a salad, what ingredient would you be and why? I will ask, just random stuff. I want to see how you think. If you're going to be a trial lawyer, I want to see how you think on your feet. Does it take you a few minutes, or do you like get on it, right? Like
Yeah.
that, tease
Yeah.
out. I'm into like teasing out who you are and like as best as I can because I don't want to waste your time, right? And I don't want you to waste your time if we're not going to be a good.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, for me, I agree with a lot of the stuff you're saying. The stuff I had to learn later on in my practice as well as at Esquire Tech is this stuff about creating core values and things like that is important. I've worked a ton of jobs where they talk about core values and it's always kind of corporate BS talk that nobody really follows because those corporations we worked at are 10,000 people and it's kind of gotten diluted. So I never really saw or understood the importance of that. But for the smaller mid-sized business that's growing, it is really crucial. And so when I hire, when people have responded to our ads, the questions I'm asking and the questions I've trained my leadership team to ask, are much more related to core values than they are experience. If we're hiring for a leadership position, then of course experience is important. I want to know that you've done this job before because everybody makes mistakes, and if you made the mistake somewhere else,
Right.
then great. That's always better. But what I want to know is that you're the right person that I want on my team, that I want my customers to deal with, that I want my clients to deal, I want my employees to deal with, that I want to deal with, that makes the same decisions based on, one of the great books for me, I agree with E-Myth, but one of the great books for me was Traction. I thought that just unbelievable book, the best ROI you'll ever get on a book. It's like $14. I get no commission. It's like $14. And if you actually read it and try to implement it as best as possible, it is really incredible insight into your business. And they talk about the core values and why they're important because you want people to make decisions. You want people to make the right decisions that you would make, even if you're not there. And if you tell them, here's what's important to me is these things, then they can make those decisions based on those principles without having to know the specific thing that they're supposed to do in that situation. Because you can't create a plan for every situation. You have to just create frameworks for people to think about these situations and say, here's how I think about situations, on how I deal with customers, on how I deal with vendors, et cetera. And that's how you should treat people too, based on our core values. I mean, is that why you have core values, or what was your impetus for even creating them?
1,000% agree with what you just said, right? That's a crucial opportunity during the interview. Is this person picking up what I'm putting down? Are they with me? Because we have 5 core values. It's easy for us to be on the same page with one of them. Are we together on all 5 of them? Because to your point, when I'm, if I'm away at a conference, if I'm with my family, and you, whoever you are on the bus, need to make a decision, you got to be with me on these core values, or else it's going to be the wrong decision and put our business back. But to me, I call it like the rudder of the ship, the core values. So for anyone on this call who hasn't developed their core values of running a business, do it today. And you don't like create these things. You don't like invent them. You discover them, right? A really good book is Fireproof by Mike Morris. He was on my podcast, the Early Show, a month ago. So Traction is a must read. Buy it today. Buy the E-Myth and buy Fireproof. That's how Mike Morris started with core values. But to your point, during the interview, that's where it starts. I'm trying to tease out, are you a core values fit for me? Right? But I don't, you can't ask that. Like, hey, like,
You can't ask that. Hey, do you have integrity?
Right.
You can't ask that. You got to ask it and create the way I do it is I create like a hypothetical situation where there's no real wrong or right answer. And I want to see how you handle that situation. And then I know kind of how you think.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's going to be a big tell. But I like to and you probably do this too, but I like to just like shut up and listen. So if I'm like doing a lot of talking, it's like sort of encourage, I want to put you on the spot and see how you think. I don't care if you're a trial lawyer. I don't care who you are. You need to have this basic capability in terms of like how to handle a jury, how to handle a difficult client who's like losing their mind on the phone, right? So we're not going to flip out at them. We're going to be cool. Everything we do revolves around the core values. If you get those people, and I know you know this, right? When you find those people, that's when you're cooking with gas. Like that's when you're taking off. That's when you're scaling. So every great core values hire that you make, you've just stepped away from the business, right? In some way, because there's power in numbers, and the bus gets a little stronger and tighter and better.
No, that's exactly right. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk some numbers. You mentioned that about 10, 15 years in or whatever, kind of you started in 2005 and then about 2020 you decided you wanted to scale. But part of the impetus for that was that you had kind of flatlined and plateaued. Where was it that you felt like you couldn't burst through a certain number? Was it kind of more at like, I was doing, 2 million in revenue, I was doing 5 million in revenue, and you're like, I just can't burst through this number? If you're comfortable
Yes,
sharing
of
that.
course. It was low seven figures, and it was the data showed a flat line, which is not good. That's
Yeah. Year
yeah.
after
And
year.
like at first I was like, hell yeah, we just hit seven figures. But then it's like, but then what's the future? So I realized that you had there's a better way to do it. And in my way, I want to just reinforce isn't the only way. This works for me. And I think we talked earlier.
Yeah.
There's some people they just want to try cases. Some people are like me; they just want to run the business. A lot of lawyers, Pratik, and I know you know this, are right in the middle. I meet trial lawyers all the time. They want to have their hand in both pots, and that's awesome. This goes back to
Yeah.
being genuine and authentic. Who is it? What do you want? What makes you happy? What serves the needs of you and your family?
Yeah.
Okay, well then let's go into there. Let's go down that lane and go hard on that, right? Let's not fake. Let's not be deluded and live a life that we're not happy with. Let's like be genuine, authentic. That's when big things. I think that's when companies do great things. They're not chasing profits. They're chasing. Obviously, they want to make money. They're for profit business. Law firms are no different,
Yeah.
but you chase passion, purpose, helping people, serving people. So when I back to hiring critique, I want humble people who like to serve. They actually like helping people. You get those people, it's like you can do so much with that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, one of the things you mentioned, and I think I want to emphasize, when we talk about traction, one of the things they talk about in that book is having a 10-year vision for your business and then working backwards from that about what numbers you need to hit. And I think that what you mentioned in there is also having like a 10-year vision for your life.
Absolutely.
Like if you're 40 right now and you say, okay, at 50, what do I want my life to look like? Do I want to be working more, working less? Do I want to be a trial lawyer? What numbers do I want to have in income? What time, free time? What do I want to do? I want free time? What do I want to do with my free time? What do I care about? And then intentionally building that over 10 years and not just letting it happen, not just letting life happen to you, saying, okay, like for you, it was clear about, hey, I want to spend more time away from the business, on family, not necessarily completely away from business. Obviously, you still have to manage everything, but less in the business, want to work on the business and end up, the goal is I want to spend more time with my family as my kids are growing up. And so, whatever that may be for somebody else, you got to have that thought process of, okay, if I want X in 10 years for my life, what is something I got to do today or this quarter or this year to set myself up 10 years from now, and not just living day to day, wake up in the morning and work on something, or month to month, living decade to decade. And the most successful people, and not just financial success but success in life, kind of have that mindset of, okay, this is what I want in 10 years is I'm okay if I make X and I work less and I work more or whatever it may be, because this is the lifestyle that I want. It sounds like that's kind of what you
100%.
did.
You just said a lot there, and I agree. So let's get real clear on where we're trying to get to, right? But to your point, you need to have. I think I just referenced this earlier. Attraction is probably the best business book I've read. Another good book is A Vivid Vision. It's by Cameron Herold. He created When 100 Got Junk, and he talks about have a 3-year plan, right? But it's to your point. You need to know the destination, and then you reverse engineer how we're going to get there. You don't have to name like every step on the process of that journey, but like, what does it look like? Okay, it's XYZ. Then we work backwards, right? And we engineer that. But lawyers, and we see it all the time, Pratik. Lawyers get to their office, their desk, and it's like a whirlwind. It's like, whoa, whoa, but you got to get, I talk about this a lot with bar
Yeah.
organizations, is time management, right? Whether you're a trial lawyer, you're pre-suit, you got to be, I think you got to be maniacal about your time and how you spend your time. Because I don't think Bill Gates is just showing up at the office and say, hey, what's going on today, guys? I mean, the guy is dialed in.
Let's
Yeah,
figure it
he's
out.
dialed in.
Right. Right.
He knew three
That's right.
years ago what he's doing today, right? And that's what you're talking about. It's a
Right.
plan. You got to. You said before intentional. I love the word intentional because that brings you, I feel like, great success. Like knowing, being real clear on where we're going. Because like, Why would someone want to work for me? If I don't even know where I'm going. So I share that plan in
Right.
the job ad. It's like this is where this company's going. So it filters out those that don't want to jump on the bus, and it brings in hopefully those who do want to come on the bus and help on that mission.
No, that's exactly right. You mentioned wanting to hire A players, people that are really, really good at their job and care about their job and care about their results and their clients. You know, A players are not working at companies that are not A
Right.
companies.
Yeah.
And A companies are not necessarily just the biggest. They're just the most well organized and well run. and smooth. If I'm an A player, if I'm a trial lawyer and I'm really good at trials and I just want to go to a place that's going to let me try cases and work on my cases, well, I want to go to a place that's run smoothly. I understand what the owner is doing. I understand how things work in this company. There's some transparency here, and I don't have to worry about a bunch of drama or a bunch of, hey, we might run out of money, or, I just want to go
Right.
and do my job and not worry about the rest. And so if you want to attract that kind of talent, which you have to, if you want to scale, you have to first be that kind of talent in your business and say, okay, if somebody walks into my office tomorrow and I can tell that they're an A player and they ask me, why should I work here versus
Yep.
these six other firms that I'm choosing between? And it can't just be I pay $10,000 more a year, because that's not
Yep.
worth the headache
Yep.
sometimes.
100%. There's a guy named Ryan McKean. He's a trial lawyer in Connecticut. He just had $100 million verdict almost like a year ago. And he's running on EOS. EOS comes from traction, right? He was on my podcast,
Traction.
the Early Show, about 6 weeks ago, and he said, this really hit me. He said, you got to set up your business so it's a place where you'd want to work at yourself, right? Like you'd actually want to work at that place.
Mm-hmm.
And that really, for me, was like game changing. So now everything I do is, because before, again, going back in time, Pratik, looking back, oh my God, I can't believe I did it that way. How did I retain any team members, right? Just doing it so poorly back in the day, then figuring out getting a little bit better, right? I'm gonna drop another book recommendation. It's called The Power of Kaizen. Kaizen is a philosophy of continual, small micro improvements each and every day, right? Kaizen your business, Kaizen your life. I love what you said about having a plan, not just for their business, but for your life. And I haven't really mapped that out for my life. And now you have me thinking about that. It's like mapping out like the family vacations, right? Jesse Itzler, right? Really successful entrepreneur. He
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really into putting, creating a plan, his life plan. So the vacations happen because the kids are going to be 18 and leaving the house soon. So that's super important, right? Create a plan. But whatever you're doing, I think you got to know where you're trying to get to. No one's going to want to work for you or with you if you don't know where you're going, where you want to go yourself.
Yeah, no one wants to get on a train that doesn't
No,
know where
why
it's
would
going,
you? That's crazy. Yeah.
right? That's crazy. Why would you? Yeah, exactly. Why would you, as somebody who's got skills, who's a good employee, who can bring value to a firm, why would you just join when you talk to a firm owner and the firm owner's like, yeah, I get some cases and this is what I want you to do and this is the space I'll give you. Like that just doesn't feel like you have your stuff together. I want to sit in a room with somebody who's an owner of a firm that says, hey, this is what we do. We do it very well. This is what we don't do anything else. And this is what the plan is. And it's like, okay, I'm on board for that, right? That makes sense to me. One of the things we talked about is picking your
Mhm.
zone, right? Like in the sense of like saying, we talked about it earlier in the sense of cases, in the sense of like knowing where you fit in on what you can handle and being okay saying no to other
Yep.
types of work, right? And I think people are afraid of missing out on opportunity, missing out on money. So they say yes to clients, cases, partnerships that they shouldn't say yes to. And what people are afraid of is, if I say no to this, I'm going to miss out on potential income. And what you realize as you become kind of a veteran is, the more I say no, the more opportunity I get, because I know what I'm looking for. And when I find, whether it's something as simple as case size, at my old firm, we kind of figured it out in year 7, year 8, where we were like, listen, we don't really want
Yep.
these small cases that are really just, we're not a pre-lit firm that has the machine to handle these kind of small cases. We want to take on litigation cases that are 6 figures, up to high 6 figures, low 7 figures. But once we got to a point where we felt like this case was worth, 2 million plus, we didn't have the resources or the time to put that attention into that, and we need to find somebody to partner with on that case early on and not waste time. And that was just us figuring out
Hmm.
our zone. And you would think, well, if a $5 million case walks in, why would you co-counsel? Well, it was because I knew that to get the 5 million, I had to bring somebody else on, and I was okay with that. But that's hard for a lot of people to get to, in this sense of, I'm going to say no to opportunity. That doesn't make any sense. I'm saying yes to everything. And it's hard to explain that to people that are early on, that you need to say no to what may look like good or great opportunities for you to go to the excellent
Yeah, I think
level.
you have to have a strong stomach, you have to say no to the smaller cases if you don't want to handle smaller cases. If you're a volume guy or gal, okay, that's do your thing. But if that's not who you are, let's again, we're being authentic. We're leading into what we want to accomplish, and we're passionate about it. If you're passionate about volume, then do that. If you're not, well, then you have to say no to that work. Now, we for a long time were doing the volume, and so I had to like rip off the band-aid, from a mindset standpoint, say no, only better stuff. And what happened, Pratik? Better cases started coming. And it sounds like hooey hooey, but the universe, I feel like, brings you what
It's
it's
true.
legit. I mean, Think and Grow Rich, probably the best self-improvement book ever written, by anyone ever,
Yeah.
right? That's if anyone hasn't read it, pick it up today. That's another book you should put in your Amazon account today. Like that's that one book in particular also got me humming. It was like, oh wow, that's pretty different. That's next level. But like, how many lawyers have really read that book, right? How many business owners have read that?
Yeah.
But that's legit. It's to the test of time. So I think the best thing you can say is no to the work. You'll do so much better though. Look, I'm telling you, if I realized those smaller cases were bogging down my firm, they were usurping team member energy, required me to hire more people, right? If you can trim down and only maybe if you want focus on the better cases, that's less staff, more tension, 80-20 rule, right? 20% of the cases brings 80% of the revenue. I encourage every single lawyer in this call, look at your inventory today, find your 20, your top 20% of cases and work them like hell. If the 80% of cases
Yeah.
will bring you 20% of your revenue, you can't spend crazy amount of time on those cases because they're never going to be big cases. Consider resolving them for fair money for your client, or referring them out. But I believe in I this is just me. This isn't the right or wrong approach. A smaller inventory of cases and go to town on those cases,
Yeah.
right? That's my take at least.
No, that's we got there too in the firm is we started, we had a lot of cases that we just didn't we realized one day, my partner and I sat down and looked at it and we're like, this is just not the firm
Yeah,
we want. And so we had to unfortunately, refer a bunch of not we had to unfortunately lay people off because we're like, we don't want these cases anymore. And if you will help you get a job somewhere else, we'll help find a home for some of these clients that we feel other attorneys could better serve them, would put in more time into their cases than we would. Because you always want to do what's best for the
yeah,
client at the end of the day. And if that means, hey, letting this case go, putting no lien on it, getting it somewhere else, fine, right? No problem. Whatever can best serve the client. Because in the end, it all works out. And it's hard. I think people look at this short term of, I don't want to let go of this small money right now, and I think that comes from
yeah,
a place of fear. They're afraid that the next client's not going to come. They're afraid, and once you kind of let, I know it sounds so hokey, and I'm not a hokey guy, but it's like once you kind of let the universe
yeah.
do its thing, it does work out as long as you're putting in your time every single day, pushing forward, being intentional. You can't just sit on the couch and hope things are going to happen to you. You
I
got to go out
wish.
there and make it happen. But like, yeah, right. You can't just sit on the couch and say, "Well, the universe will take care of me." Like you got to go out and make it happen. But if you're intentionally making it happen, it will come, and it is natural. One of the things I want to touch on, you mentioned that you went to this conference in Virginia, and that really kind of made you change your mindset of how to approach this. You also mentioned at the very top of the show masterminds and LinkedIn, I think groups maybe. What made you want to join some of these masterminds? Which masterminds did you join? Which ones did you find useful? Did you find ones that were not? Tell me about all
Yeah,
about these
I think a
masterminds.
mastermind is like a shot in the arm. If you're trying to grow your business, a mastermind is where you should be. But see, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room. So I want to be in a mastermind where I forced to level up. Everyone else is just a little bit ahead of me or a lot ahead of me. So then that's my philosophy. So I like to be in big rooms, small rooms with super successful people who are further ahead than me. Pilma, Pilma is an organization. Ken Hardison, he's been fantastic. I'm in his mastermind. I was in a different mastermind, but with growth comes you need to keep challenging yourself. And like I would encourage everyone in this call, you got to be uncomfortable. Like all this stuff I'm talking about isn't really difficult stuff, but I was willing to get uncomfortable and take chances. I had a really nice life critique. I had a really nice income, but I was like, screw this. Let's go for something bigger, right? And there were years where my income went down as I was scaling up. I'm just being super upfront here. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? But then what happens? It's spiking, and I'm not gloating. I'm just humbled as hell to say that.
Yeah.
And you put the work in, and then slowly. But this is hard stuff. It's never going to be easy. I talk to lawyers, like I said, I'm a coach for lawyers, for PI lawyers running, say, $500,000 to $1 million practices who want to scale. I say, be patient. I wish I knew patience 10 years ago, 15 years ago. This is a long game. If you're 55, you got to be patient. If you're not where you want to be, you're going to get there. You got to keep going. You got to keep hitting the gas, because a lot of people give up. But see, my ships are burned. I'm so far into this. I'm so, deep that, like, it's all, I'm all in. When you're all in, you take risks. I mean, calculated risks, not to be reckless, right? But your muscles get a little bit stronger. As you said before, you say no to things that you used to say yes to. You gotta have an iron stomach, like we said. But this is just my approach, right? This isn't like there's a million
Yeah.
ways to do it, but you got to be real about what you're going for. That, I think, is universal, right?
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about this stuff that you just mentioned, and in kind of coaching other lawyers. You're looking at yourself, you're kind of coaching the younger you,
100%.
right? Like, you're looking at lawyers that have practices that were similar to what you had for 15
Yes.
years. I mean, 15 years is a
Yes.
long time where you're like, I've been doing things a certain way, it's working, it's okay, and maybe it's not what everything I want, but it's a risk to say I'm going to risk
Yeah.
what I built to go build what I
Yes.
want to build. And
Yeah.
right, because your family's relying on you, your lifestyle's relying on you, and if you want to maintain your lifestyle, you got to just keep doing what you're doing. But if you're like, hey, I'm willing to downgrade, and then I'm willing take this chance. What do you think was probably the top three things that were the biggest mistakes you were making in those
Doing
15
everything
years?
myself. I mean, I could give you 33 things, honestly, but like the biggest things were, there were no
Yeah.
systems. Number two, I was doing everything practically. And number three is my marketing was generic. My marketing was just trying to scream louder than the next guy or gal, in my market in Boston. Those three things. You got to be different with your marketing. You got to have systems. Those are some things, and you should be doing very few things per day. Like you and I, we're doing this call. There's very few things I'm doing today, right? Because, like, my hair's on fire. I have awesome team members who help me execute the things that they're, I'm sure, better at than me anyway. So let's be humble here. A lot of lawyers in their call, I can do it better than anyone else. No, I disagree. I'm sure there's other people that can do it better than you. So delegate. I say this on whenever I speak, I always say delegate things. John Morgan, he was on my podcast. He was my first guest on my podcast. He talks about, and he and I had lunch one time. He said, you got to delegate ruthlessly, like delegate like a maniac, but you need to have the right people to delegate to. You can't just, oh, I'm a great delegator now, or I'm trying to delegate. First of all, delegation is hard as hell, but you must have amazing people. I just feel like it keeps going back to the people.
Yeah, it really does. And great people will very clearly show you that they're better than
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah,
at that whatever role that is, right? And that's okay, right? That's another thing about that ego is a lot of people think, oh, well, I'm the best. I know what kind of marketing I want. I know what works in marketing. The reality is, if you're a lawyer and you've never run a business before and you're starting your firm, you don't even know what you don't know.
yeah,
You don't even know the questions
yes,
to ask when you're talking to a marketing agency. When I interview people, interviewing people is almost like a crash course in learning. It's one thing to interview a lawyer because I know what lawyers should be saying and I understand what kind of lawyer I want. When I'm interviewing somebody for marketing, or I'm interviewing somebody for operations, or I'm interviewing somebody for, customer success, or any of these other roles that I've never done before and never been trained on, the first few interviews, I don't even know what
yep,
questions to ask because I don't know what the appropriate way to do that. And then by interview number 12, I've kind of heard and I kind of, okay, now I know what I'm looking for. And the reality is it's a crash course in learning. So a lot of times I think, when you're talking about marketing or you're talking about these departments that a lot of lawyers have never done before, never run these jobs before, have never been trained in those before, be humble enough to know that you don't know what you're looking for in the beginning. You just don't. And I don't know how you feel about that, but I felt like interviewing people in these departments has educated me so much on what I
Yeah,
actually want.
you have to get in the fire and do things. You have to learn. You have to take your licks. This involves sometimes you make the wrong hires, right? You make the wrong decisions. Well, you learn. You're always sort of self improving. I would encourage anyone who's really looking to grow to read the books that we talked about if you haven't already. Again, this comes down to systems and people. Pratik, you just talked about interviewing. Interviewing is an art form. Interviewing is like, it's so hard to do. There's millions of books on interviewing, but that's just like one small sliver of what a business owner CEO has to do, right? Ideally, you want to develop leaders who will do your interviewing for you. That assumes that you brought the right people on the bus, right? Those rock stars that know about the core values. They know, because I love to bring in other team members to make those personal decisions, because they've raised their hand and said, I like this person. That creates buy-in. They want to see that person succeed. It's not just me saying, hey guys, here's someone I just hired. It's like, oh no, they're bringing it to me. We just hired this person, Chris. Oh, and I'd love to sit down, meet with this
Right.
person. That's when you're growing, is when you're not doing all that yourself. I think for certain positions, yeah, I should be having those conversations,
Yeah.
but not a lot.
It is all balance on, like, it is all balance. It's, and that just comes with experience. There's no
Yeah, I
playbook.
know. I know.
There's
Yeah.
principles
Yeah.
that you can follow and guidelines you can follow, but there's nobody that can tell you, hey, Monday morning, here's the 10 things you should be doing. Tuesday morning, here's the 10 things you should be doing. If you want that, that's a job. And somebody will tell you what to do. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Like, that's okay. If that helps you achieve your personal goals in your life, then that's what you should do. Whatever it is that you in your personal life have for your own goals, that's what you should. I have friends that have been working as a defense attorney for 15 years, and they love it. It serves them well. Maybe they don't necessarily love the job, but it pays them enough. It gives them enough freedom to do all the other things in life
That's
they want to
awesome.
do, and they're happy. Now, that's not something I would ever want for my life, because I don't want to do defense work. It's not me, but I'm happy for them. They're my friends, and I'm happy that they're happy. And so that's an important thing too. Is why are you doing the things you're doing? Why are you starting a practice? Why are you deciding to do a bunch of trials? Why are you deciding to take on? Does it serve the greater purpose of what you're trying to accomplish in your own life? And that's a really hard question that you have to find time for to figure out. Speaking of time, one of the things that you clearly talk a lot about is reading. You read a lot. You have a lot, and a lot of the books you've mentioned, I've read as well. There's some that I haven't, like I think the Kaizen one, and there was one other you mentioned that I hadn't. But Think and Grow Rich is a great book. Traction is a great book. Fireproof is a great book. All of those. There's a couple of books behind me, like You Can't Teach Hungry, You Can't Teach Vision. I don't know if you
Oh,
can see
that's
that
required reading.
right there, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, those are great books. Yeah, you got to find time. And so, the question that when I recommend books to people, oh, I wish I had time to read. I don't have time to read.
Yeah. That kind of drives me
What do you
crazy, to
say
be
to that?
fully honest with you. Uh, I mean, you got to find the time. So I get up usually about four in the morning, meditate.
That's too early for me. I'm
But
not
like
doing it.
whatever.
I'm not doing it.
Well, I'm a weirdo, but I go to bed at eight. So it's still 8 hours of sleep.
Yeah, I'm more of like a
Yeah, that's
6:30
okay.
guy. I'm not waking up at this. I know I see all these Instagram reels. These people like wake up at 4:30, do a cold plunge. I'm like, bro,
I'm not
I'm
quite
not
there,
doing it.
not yet, not
I'm
yet.
sorry.
But like
Yeah.
but that works for me. And 6:30 works for you, right? But like you can get so much stuff done. We talked about like, hey, you only have so many hours in the day. You can only scale yourself so far, right? There's a finite limit there.
Yeah.
And obviously that's where other people come in. But you get so much stuff during the day. Like to me, this is a high value use of my time. This is a great conversation we're having. I'm learning from you, right? And so this is like what I wanted. I enjoy geeking out on these topics. I just like it. So I lean into what I like to do, what interests me. That's my passion, right? And so, but lawyers they work crazy hours. I'm home by 5 o'clock, and I live an hour away from here, from my office in Boston. You can get so much done, but and I've spoken about. I have a class, and that's been my highest received presentation was time management for lawyers, because lawyers, for the most part, just fumble it, right? So I don't take unscheduled phone calls. I shorten client phone calls as much as possible, just like little things. I just think you got to get right. I agree with you. We have plenty of time to get stuff done, and have time to get home for dinner, right? I don't want any lawyers working for me.
And I'll tell you one of the things.
No, no, go
Sorry,
ahead.
just to jump in on, just to
Yeah,
give
yeah.
my 2 cents on that. What I think was the greatest change I made in giving myself more time, and this was taken straight from the traction book, is having once a week meetings and pushing all those daily decisions that you're asked to make. Where somebody, hey, you got a quick second? Hey, can I something to chat about? Hey, can you sign this check? Hey,
Yeah.
all that stuff. Unless it's like an emergency that needs to be decided right now, that's going to cause big problems in the company, it's all pushed to the weekly meeting. And then we have a weekly 1 hour meeting with the office manager, with the leadership team. Hey, what are all the things that need to be decided? And I tell my leaders in the company very early on, like, hey, this weekly meeting is where you tell me what progress we made last week, what the goals are for next week, and what decisions you need from me. Those are the three things we're going through in this meeting. And give me all the things you need from me in this, and then my focus is on you. I don't have to stop in the middle of what I'm doing to ask all the questions I need to get. And that has been such a game changer. And I would never do it any other way, because, or I would never go back to doing it the old. Maybe there's a more efficient way, but I would do it that. But I would never go back to the old way of just, hey, just ping me if you need something. My door's always open, right? That's like a big thing. Yeah, my door's open if you have something that you need to talk about and it's important in an emergency. Absolutely. But if it's one of these like quick things that need to be handled, we'll handle it at the Tuesday meeting or the Wednesday, whenever the meeting is set. So that was a big thing for me. The other thing I want to touch on the reading thing, I think a lot of people, especially lawyers, we're used to starting something and finishing it in the same session. We're used to starting to read a case, read the whole case, and figure out what's going on. Read a brief, finish the brief. And with reading these books, the discipline I had to develop is reading for 15 or 20 minutes
Mm-hmm.
and putting it away. Not having to read 5 chapters today. I'm just going to read one and I'm going to put it away. And I'm going to read one tomorrow and I'm going to put it away. And that was a big help for me.
Absolutely. And just go back for a second. You talk about that 5 minute. Hey, Pratik, you have 5 minutes. That's going to be a 45-minute meeting if you're lucky. So you excising those out of your schedule and getting super intentional. We keep going back to that word, but it's true. You're getting hyper focused, and people will just have to respect those because that's your time. We can never get that back. So people must respect your time. So you have the structure of EOS. You have your leadership meeting, right? And there's that structure accountability so that no one's running around with their hair on fire. But you're demonstrating the leadership because you are encouraging other people to do that too. Because I try to replicate myself as much as possible, not literally, of course, but just try to develop. We talk about developing leaders, right? Because but you want the people that report to you also not to be interrupted by those 5 minute that turn into 45 minutes. Like that should trickle down. So I feel like your headspace as the business owner trickles down to every. So if you're having a really bad day and you're stressed out, your team is going to feel that and pick up on that. And that's not fair to them. You got to be
Yeah.
super clear when you walk in your office. If you're having a crap morning, forget about it. Like if you have to, fake it, whatever. But you can't be a negative and down and dispirited because your team picks up on that and it's a downer. It's depressing. You have to have energy, right? We talk about culture. We talk about traction. Morning huddle is so important. We have morning huddles every single day that gets everyone on the same page. Weekly meetings. I feel like you have to give your team shout outs. You have to say like, hey, John, great job on that memo. Sally, awesome job signing that case up. Get specific on your praise. I feel like that stuff really matters. My big thing, Pratik, is treating my team awesome. Like I literally remind myself in my calendar once a month to give everyone a random compliment because I may get sidetracked. We say there's no time for things. Things get no. There's time for that. So I calendar it. So in case I forget, oh yeah, I got to check in with everyone. That is so big. It's a genuine compliment. It's like, hey, awesome job. Or, you know what, like Pratik, you're really important to me. I really rely on you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Like being genuine and real. And I'm being vulnerable because I'm saying that, I definitely need you, but I'm not going to BS you, right? Just we're having open communication here, healthy communication. That's one of our core values. We go back to core values. That's one of our core values is no BS. We don't play games here. Just very
Right.
direct. I want to hire people who are direct, who are going to challenge me and be like, Chris, are you crazy? That's not a good idea. Why are you doing that? Let's do it this way. Challenge me because I'm going to
Right.
challenge you. So let's do it together.
Yep. And there's going to be times where, if you as a business owner are going to take a risk, you got to take it, right? And even if people tell you no, you got to be like, you know what, this is what I think is right. But if you want to be a successful business owner, you have to be open to listening and say, okay, you know what, I think I agree with you guys. You guys made some good points. All right, let's not do that. Let's shift gears. You don't want to become stubborn. You don't want to become hard headed. But there are times where you need to be stubborn. And it's so hard because there's no framework for that. You just have to go with it. And you just have to kind of, if it's really an important decision and you disagree with your leadership team, then you disagree with them and you got to take the leap and you take the responsibility for that call. But there are times when you want to listen. You don't want to be governed by, it's so hard because you want to have the freedom to be able to make your decisions, but you need a checks and balances of people jumping in that you respect, saying, hey, really you should think about this. Hey, really you should think about this. And that's a good way of doing it. And so, you know, thank you so much. I think we're coming up on time, so I want to get wrapped up and get you back to doing what you want to do. But one of the things I want to ask you, because I ask everybody on this podcast, is if you could go back and you could give one piece of advice to the younger Chris Earley, what would you tell him?
Where do I start? Um, um, honestly, man, from my vantage point, it's so hard. There's so many. I would say create. I would say mindset. Think abundantly. I share my stuff, man. Like I share everything I'm doing. I don't hope because I know that I'm probably gonna outwork you. I mean you. I mean just like I'm gonna put in the work, right? I'm gonna get it done, and if you can outwork me, great. But like it's not a zero sum game. Like lawyers, we think a zero sum. Like what, if you and I lose, mindset shift, thinking abundantly. That's my biggest thing. I wish I did differently. Because again, we go back to Think and Go Rich. That book is about abundance, mindset, giving. Um, I feel like that was my. I wish I got that 10 years earlier. But there's really no point. Like so I said to my wife, "Oh, I wish I did this back then." She's like, "It doesn't really matter." But obviously, we think we wish we could go back. But you'll be way ahead of the curve if you read that book and just be open minded and share your stuff and be a giver. I'm gonna drop one more book. It's called Never Eat Alone, about networking. Never Eat Alone is a really good book about being a giver and not a taker. You will get so much from people when you actually want to help them and share your stuff with them. Pratik, my world is opened up. I share my stuff all the time on stage, on podcasts, on lunch dates. Like, and the more I do that, the more I grow. And I don't want to sound like a jerk. It's just true. Like the more you give, you're rewarded like 10 times on that. And
Yeah.
that's what I wish I did. Wish I did differently back in the day, was giving and not being so small minded, so selfish in my own lane, worry about my own stuff. I would have done that differently.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and I 100% agree. And I agree with what you're saying, which is you don't want to look back and say, oh, I did this wrong, I did that wrong, because everything you did led you to where you are today, and you're happy today, so it's okay. But I always ask that question because I think it's good for the audience that may be starting out or starting off younger, that they should be asking themselves that question: is, okay, what am I doing wrong that I can
one
stop
Hundred
doing
percent.
wrong
Can I
sooner?
ask you what how would you answer it looking back?
Oh man, that's no one's asked me before, and I actually haven't thought about it. But I think I would probably say to think more like a business
100%.
person earlier on, and actually try to sit down and know what you want. Right, this concept of what do I want my life to look like in 10 years, and then building a practice that gets there and doing the math on that. I probably didn't do that until about 8 years into my practice, and I wish I had done that sooner. I would have, again, I'm happy where I'm at, so I'm not complaining about, and everything I've done led me here, which I'm fine with. But I believe I believe that that's something people should do as early as possible and map out what they want and how they're going to
Yeah.
get there. Because you'll be surprised what the math shakes out
Yeah,
for you.
and just one more. I just want to say you got to take risks. You're where you are today because you took risks.
Yeah,
Same here. I've failed on a lot of stuff, and a few things have hit, thankfully. But if you're in the game, if you're taking shots, most people aren't. You're gonna be way ahead of the game, right? But you gotta have that iron stomach. I feel like you gotta make tough. If someone's not working out, you gotta let
yeah,
them go. If you feel strongly about a marketing decision, it could help you. You may have to spend the money and be uncomfortable for a while, right? Let it fly. Take a risk. Take a chance. You'll be fine. It's probably going to work out.
Take a
You're going to be
chance.
okay. You know, or what happened.
Yeah, most of the time they do
Yeah,
work out. Yeah, it's crazy because most of the time it
it's
works
true.
out. But but I think yeah, that's a great place for us to end. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for listening or watching. We'll see you on the next episode of Bootstrap Solo. And remember, just because guys like Chris Earley make it look effortless and easy doesn't mean that it is. One ask is if you enjoyed the pod, please share where you share stuff, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. If you believe that Chris provided any value, please let him know. Please share it with a friend that you believe could help, that this could help. Thank you, and see you next time on Bootstrap Solo.